Hey you, if you're part of the core audience of this channel, I want to remind you of how incredibly special you are. And not because you're watching this particular YouTube channel, but it's because of the position in history in which you are sitting right now. Now, who's the core audience, you may ask, because this doesn't apply to everybody, just the core audience of this channel. Now, of course, I'm happy to have everybody who wants to watch the channel come and join us. But the core audience is a special group. And obviously, I don't know exactly who you are, but I know who you are in a general sort of way because YouTube tells me. YouTube tells me that both men and women watch this channel, but mostly men. YouTube also tells me that people from all around the world are watching this content, which is cool. But mostly from the United States. YouTube also tells me what the age category breakdowns of viewership is, and that there are practically no children watching this content. And I'm actually happy about that. I have no desire to create children's content. There's a fairly even distribution of viewers in different age ranges, but to my surprise, there's a significant amount of viewers who are 40 years old and above. I might call that roughly the Gen X group. And I'm part of that group. I'm about 60 years old. And that part of the audience, the Gen Xers, are perhaps the greatest generation that has ever lived. Yeah. And it's because of the opportunities that we've been afforded. Now, let's consider people who are much older than Gen X. These folks are probably now in nursing homes or have passed on. They didn't have the same opportunities that we do. They had a worldview that was mostly just what they saw and participated in their own communities. They didn't have the easy ability to reach out across the world and communicate with other people. If they wanted to understand what was happening far away, well, they could read about it in the newspaper, but there isn't much context, much content in the newspaper. It's mostly headlines. If they really wanted to dig into a subject about something far away outside of their community, they'd probably go to the local library, read some books. But their library may only have a certain amount of content. Books each have their own perspective. And so you'd have to read multiple books to really get a well-rounded view. Books are also written by the victors. And so even with a bunch of book research, you may not get a full picture of what really happened. And of course, books are not real time. It takes time to publish and distribute a book, and that's long after the events have passed. So the people who are older than we are, who have passed on, they lived a pretty insular life that was driven by the community that they grew up in. It was a very real, organic life where people worked together cooperatively to make strong towns. And those towns grew up without a whole lot of external interference. As time moved forward, we saw the world change. And then our generation came on board where when I grew up as a little kid, the world was still pretty insular. It was still pretty community-driven. And it was a very, very different world than the world of today. And in a lot of ways, I think it was a better world. I think it was more organic. There were more real connections with people. There was a lot less mayhem and violence and negative forces that were just stirring up things. It's good times. But our generation, Generation X, got to see the transition from the old analog world to today's digital world. And we've seen the benefits of both sides and the downsides of both sides. Now, the people who are younger than about 40, they've grown up in this tightly connected worldwide world where ideas are disseminated throughout the planet at almost real time, and that it's easier for certain people to disseminate ideas and concepts and to try to manipulate the whole world as if it's their own personal ant farm. And we've seen a lot of pressure put on governments, on people, to move things in a certain direction, to be at the benefit of the few rather than the masses. We've seen the economic system being used as a weapon and a tool to make money for the few. And the world has really changed in the last few decades. It feels to me like the modern world is devolving into the Truman Show. And for those unfamiliar, the Truman Show is a great movie. I recommend it highly. And it's the story of Truman, who, as a small child, as a baby, is raised by a TV studio. And he lives out his entire life in this make-believe city TV studio. And Truman doesn't realize that he's in a TV studio, that his whole life is scripted by a director. And The Truman Show is an extremely popular TV show where people watch Truman stumble through his life, resolving issues and reacting to the situation around him. While Truman thinks it's all real, it's actually being scripted. Well, eventually Truman starts to notice some inconsistencies. And so when Truman is 30 or 40 years old, he starts to question the reality that he's in. And some things just don't seem to make sense to him. And he seeks to escape from the Truman Show, even though he doesn't really realize that it's all fake. Increasingly, our world feels that way to me. It seems like we have all of these news stories and events that are popping up at an accelerated rate. We have violence and mayhem and just craziness happening in our cities and in our countries. And these sorts of things didn't happen in the old organic world. And if you were born into this world of hyperactivity, maybe it all feels normal to you. But to us in Generation X, at least I can speak for myself, it doesn't feel normal. It feels inorganic. It feels contrived. And not necessarily in such a positive way. And so I hang on to those memories of the old world, the world before the World Wide Web, the world before cell phones and GPS, the world when we called somebody up on the phone and they didn't have caller ID, and we'd actually talk to people. The world where people were a little bit more willing to work together for the common good and the common community. And back in those days, I was living near a big city, a few 100,000 people, and occasionally bad things would happen. Somebody would get shot or killed, and it was big news. Maybe once every couple weeks, we'd get a newspaper story or a television news story about somebody who got into an altercation outside of a bar, and it was surprising and shocking. But today, it seems like that's a everyday occurrence, and we don't pay too much mind to it. It's like, stuff happens in the city, you know? Now, of course, fortunately, even if there are hundreds of cases of violent crime in the city each day, there are millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people. And so your odds of being a victim on any particular day, still pretty small. But the whole vibe has changed to much more of a chaotic temper. And I remember the old world, I respect the new world, And there are certainly a lot of things that have gotten better with time. Our technology is fantastic, and we can now afford incredible things that were unattainable decades back. But it's been at the cost of our humanity. And I think that it would be to our benefit if we could find a way to reignite that analog touch, the humanity, and see the digital world for the coldness that it really has. So that's just a thought in my mind as to why Generation X is so incredibly special. Because this is a generation that has one foot in the old world, one foot in the new world, and we can see the world the way it truly is because we have the history and the perspective to see where we've come from and where we're going to. So it's up to us to try to pass on some of the wisdom and some of the benefits of the old world and those true analog connections, the humanity to the new generations. And I hope that we can help forge a path forward where we have a new world that benefits from the advances, the technology, but yet retains our humanity. Hey, that's my thoughts for the day. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy the channel, please come back and watch more content. Consider subscribing so it's easier to find if you would. And if you like this episode, you want to let me know, you can throw me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. And if you really want to help contribute to this content, consider joining the channel. It's just a couple bucks a month, and that really helps me out. So thanks so much, and I'll catch you again soon on another upcoming episode.